Genius prize you find.
Hi, Jenny.
Am I?
Hi, thanks for showing up with all the commotion. We're going to let a few people get in here. I just sent out some shares to get people going, and I'll let this run for about 1 more minute and then we'll get started if
Sure.
that's okay with you. All right, cool.
Is this a video or just a pop video?
Yes, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't know if I need to do anything to turn it on.
No. Just when I'll turn you on after I do the
Okay.
introductions.
Okay.
And we'll figure it out. Don't worry.
Sounds good. You can hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Great.
Just gonna let the music play. I got my own music
Sure.
playing so that it's not Waitbot. He's a little
Right.
Oh, that music. So my husband's music. I got my husband's music playing right now. So.
Oh, where are you based from? Your accent.
Oh, I'm in New Orleans.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. So, fun times. All right, let me do a couple of more pre-show things, and then I'll get us started here. Gonna share out
Sounds good.
one more platform.
Okay.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome. I don't get my clap because I didn't have Waitbot on the stage. But you guys are in the Laughter After Trauma show. And my name is Deanna. I'm a speaker, educator, and coach that brings light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. I am a thriver after IPV, which is intimate partner violence, and that journey led me to find the beauty in the laughter and healing. I believe that we're all magic and that we all can be self healers. And with that, I have really created this show right here, the Laughter After Trauma podcast, which showcases everyday people who have triumphed in the face of trauma. And it's all about providing hope and awareness and connection and community, just to show that if we can, you can, and share that laughter after. Today's guest is Jenny Vaez, and I hope I'm saying her last name right. She'll correct me in just a minute. And she is an artist that is nationally recognized for her contemporary fine art. She does murals. I don't know if you've been to her page, but go visit her Instagram or Facebook page. Her stuff is amazing. She does these powerful paintings that are highly influenced by the beauty and complexity of human emotions, and really does capture the nuanced expressions of emotion and feeling in her paintings. If you go look at it, really, I think all of them so far that I've seen, they're pretty moving. Shows the frailty of the humans, or some depth and some emotions. Just all of her paintings. That the last one that I looked at was a mural that she did at a restaurant. So I'm sure she'll talk about it a little bit, but just some amazing work. So I am going to invite you up to camera. Let's see if I know how to do this. Invite to video. Okay. And then you will have to unmute yourself. Hey.
Hi.
So did I say your last name right? Vyas?
You did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, before we get started, I like to just do a little bit of getting to know you. So tell us,
Sure.
like, where you are, family, things like that. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am based out of Chicago
Okay.
and born and raised in India. I've been in Chicago for 27 years at this point. Um, I have most of my family and between Chicago and New York and New Jersey,
Okay, cool.
and some in India
Now,
still, but yeah.
yes. So you're in India right now?
No,
Is
no,
that what you said?
I'm in Chicago right now. I said some
Oh,
family in India still. Yeah,
oh, some family still in India.
yeah, yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, you get to kind of go back and forth. That's probably pretty cool, huh?
I actually haven't been back to India in 12 years, so I'm overdue.
Yeah, for real. Real. I mean, it was hit pretty hard with COVID, right?
Oh, it was so bad. Yeah.
It
I
was so
mean, we lost a
bad.
cousin during the mass. He got hit with the first variant and we lost him. So it was a pretty
Oh, I'm sorry.
traumatic, first year for us. But yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're all moving along. Everybody else
We're
who caught
moving
it after this,
along,
sorry,
moving
like my
along.
hair is such a mess. Everybody else who caught it afterwards, survived just fine. So
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, it is. It's been rough. I know the past 2 years when I talk about this show, I feel like nobody escapes it at this point. We've all experienced some level of
yeah.
trauma. There's just no escaping it. So, before we kind of get into some of your story that kind of led you from wherever you were to where
Hmm.
you are now, because I know you've gone through some heartbreak to bring out this artwork, and I don't know the story, so I like to learn this with the audience, which is kind of fun. Before we do that, I like to do just a little icebreaker. It's a this or that. Would I don't warn people what I'm going to do, but
Okay.
you would have known at least that I was going to do it though.
Yes, yes. Okay.
But that's okay. All right.
I'm
So
okay. Yeah, go
surprise,
for it.
we're doing this or that.
Okay.
So it's only two questions, and I just feel
Okay.
like these are sometimes two questions is enough for people to kind of get to know you and say, oh, okay, I relate to her. She makes sense to me.
Sure.
So the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
question is, are you a music person or a podcast person? Like, say when you're walking and exercising, what would you opt into, or while you're
When I work
driving?
out, yeah, when I work out, it's music, but when I'm driving, it's podcasts.
Okay, love that, love that. All right, and then the next one is, are you a person who prefers a phone call or do you prefer texting?
Phone calls.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, my message is like, hey, if you know me, just text me. That's my voice message.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just
I
like,
mean, not everybody. I don't prefer everybody calling me, but
oh,
my
sure.
close friends and family, I love phone calls.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it too. All right, well, cool. So we're going to go ahead and get into this. What I'd love to hear from you is your story that kind of brought you into the place of finding your laughter after, your ability to be able to smile that beautiful smile, because I know that's not where you always were, and just based on some of the stuff in your um your little questionnaire, art from a broken heart, there's a story there. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. My story, I always say this, like all great stories start. My story started from a heartbreak, a broken heart. And I went through a rough period in about 2013. And during that period of grieving and letting go of this relationship that I thought was going to last a lifetime, I couldn't stop thinking about painting. And it was during that period of healing and really going through some deep regression therapy to truly understand the patterns I had repeated in my life to end me in that space where I almost married someone that wasn't right for me. We weren't right for each other.
Mm,
And I really wanted to understand the depth of the pain, right? Like, the pain was so deep, and I couldn't understand how logically you could still want to be with someone who really clearly, one, didn't want to be with me, and two, wasn't right for me.
yeah.
And I chose to just do so much work and truly understand what my expectations and my part were in that journey, because not only just to forgive him, but truly to move on in a space where I was able to almost create a toolkit for myself to be able to provide it to others and provide a manuscript on how to love me and understand my trauma and what extended that, like that ability for me to be able to take care of myself during, of course, like the period of grief, but also to truly understand how I'm making others responsible for my trauma, right? Like that's key. If you understand your trauma and how you are expecting others to save you from it, I think that's where the answers start, unfolding for you, because then you can start taking responsibility for your pain that
Yeah.
nobody can fix.
Right, right. And so how long were you in a relationship with this person?
2.5 years we were living
Mhm.
together. We literally had a wedding date picked out. We were a week away from locking in our venue.
That's yeah,
And
so that's
yeah,
insane, So I only ask that because I think that some people minimize things based on
yeah.
time, and it doesn't matter. I don't think time should be a factor when you're considering these kind of things because when your heart is in it, your heart
That
is
is
in it.
very interesting that you bring that up. I actually had a conversation with a friend who got through and who's watching probably right now, probably will be mad at me for mentioning this, but he went through a long-term breakup. And whenever I would try to relate anything or draw from my experience, I kept getting corrected that my relationship was such a short period. And
Mm,
people don't understand that the depth of the pain is the same. I remember when I was going through my breakup, my one of my close colleagues at the time, it was she was my boss. She told me that at least you're not married. She said the pain is the same when you break up, but the complications are so much deeper. And I couldn't understand that line at the time, right? But that's what it is. The pain is always deep, no matter who goes
mhm,
through what.
mhm,
I think we
mhm.
just have no idea what people's capacity of falling in love and the amount of love that they can give to each other.
Right, and I do also think that we have a tendency to compare our traumas
Hmm.
to think that, oh, so like, let's I was in an 18-year abusive relationship and
Yeah.
I dated that person before that, right? So we were together 22, 23 years. I mean, we're high school
Oh, wow.
sweethearts. So, some people compare their traumas
Hmm.
and their issues, and the only difference really that I think occurs in certain situations is, okay, maybe it turns into something chronic, like a disease,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
you might have something chronic, you have something that you've had to regurgitate longer. But I don't think the trauma is different. And I don't think that it's fair. And I think that needs to be something that stops is comparing because the
Yeah. It's like,
comparison
yeah.
is, it's
Yeah, the
silly.
comparison dynamics really is I agree. I 100% agree, because we really don't understand what every person's pain is. I think we can do the best we can to truly put ourselves in their shoes, but until you're going through it. I mean, it took me apart. I fell apart. I did not know how to lift myself up. And I moved back home to my parents' home because I just couldn't even take care of myself. And
Mhm.
they loved him so much as well, and it was a collective healing for us. And it was such a beautiful journey to be able to spend that time and reach out for help, because this was truly the first time I genuinely reached out for help with to my friends and to my family. I asked for help, and I did not know how I was going to get through it. And I think the magnitude of my dependency in that relationship was so evident at that moment, and I really had to do something about it, or I was never going to get out of that cycle. um, and that's where my art
So
came.
what
Yeah.
prompted you to Right. So what prompted you to take the first step though? So you
Yeah.
had to at some point recognize it and go, okay, I need to take at least the first step to ask.
Yeah, I mean,
Where did
oh,
that
ask
come
for help.
from? Because I feel like,
Yeah.
yes, that's a lot of courage it
I
takes
mean, honestly,
to,
I
because
yeah, go ahead.
just because like, especially like if this was, you were younger, I'm guessing you were younger,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So was this your first serious relationship
No, I mean, I
outside of being at home or,
first serious relationship where I went that far, yes. And so it was I had gotten married when I was 19. That was just I was a child, so that was a complete different story. This was the first adult serious relationship where we actually
right.
he proposed, I said yes. We're planning a wedding, even if there were doubts, we just thought that we could. You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of like the red
Yes.
flags aren't as big when you are really drastically so different. And for me to reach out for help, it really, honestly, it took some therapy, because my therapist really walked me through some of my trauma, which really emerged from how I was raised, which wasn't in any way. shape or form wrong or, traumatic by any means. My parents are still together, but it's just how I was raised in India, in the culture. It just kind of created this mindset of scarcity. And I did not
Mm-hmm.
know that. I wasn't aware of that. And once I started kind of unpacking those, like almost like uh, unveiling those layers, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was evident that if I didn't repair some of my issues with my parents, my friendships, the way I maintained friendships,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was never going to get to that place of peace, genuine
Mm-hmm.
self-love, right? Like, because people talk about self-love and this movement, but true self-love is really taking ownership of your trauma, ownership of your part in the damage that you do to relationships, and that's when self-love comes in, right?
Right. And
Like the
and
first
I
step, I guess.
yeah, and I think the first step is awareness. And I might be wrong about that, but oh, I'm sorry. My thing is kind of acting up. Okay. I do think the first step is awareness, acknowledging, right? Saying, okay, I have to admit this to myself, even if even if there's some heavier part that someone did that was outside of your control, there's always parts that are
Mm-hmm.
in your control. And so that acknowledging it and going, okay, like you just said, so being able to acknowledge and say, hey, you know what? I'm recognizing that even though my parents are together and that I
Mm-hmm.
was raised in a loving, caring family, there were still things that were not the best. And there
Yeah.
were things that I internalized that were not the best and they don't serve
Yeah.
me right now. And I think that goes for anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and so I coach. I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. but a lot of people ask me this question, right? Like, well, like, I mean, everything stems back to childhood. And yes, like our attitudes, our belief systems, our
Mm-hmm.
values, they all stem back to childhood. And we create these rules in our life because of that.
Yeah.
And we don't notice it. We have to reparent ourselves as adults because not only does time change and society grow and our awareness grows, but also how we've internalized things as we grow up changes
Mm-hmm.
because those things don't serve us anymore. Cultures are different, whatever. And I appreciate that because scarcity, when I first heard the word scarcity, always it came to mind money,
Yeah.
money. But that is not the only thing that a scarcity mindset affects.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
affects whether or not you have enough love to go around. And I think that was one of the things I dealt with was who's going to love me after all of this? Or do I have the capacity? I gave everything I had to this person.
Right.
Do I have the capacity to be able to give that much to somebody else? They're
Mm-hmm.
never going to get the best of me because that person got the best of me, which is also not true. I mean,
All right.
it's not
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But that's the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And
So,
I think awareness is, my dad always says, I grew up with the mindset of, in order to find a solution, you have to first accept there is a problem, right? And for me,
yeah,
this
I
was
like that.
the greatest example of that, that I really had to accept that there was a problem in how I was approaching relationships. And really, in order to build healthier relationships and really repair the ones that were damaged a little bit along the way, I had to accept
So,
that there was, yeah.
s- so did this impact your relationship with your parents as far as repairing that, becoming aware of these things? Did you get to talk to them about some of this stuff?
Yes, and a lot of the trauma that I had internalized really it's been beautiful to be able to talk about those things and really heal together, because I have also hurt them over the years,
Mm,
because I'm a very free spirited, very opinionated human being. And it's not always easy when a parent is trying to teach you how to survive in the real world, right? Because they just
right.
are trying to give you the tools. And when you rebel so much, it's not an easy process. And
Right.
so we just couldn't. I mean, we there was a lot of love. It was passionate, beautiful love, but it just, the communication was lacking. And we're in such a great place where we can actually talk things out for hours if needed. I mean, I've
Yeah.
always been able to do that, but now it's a place of vulnerability, right? Like it's such a safe space. We have created a home in each other's hearts.
Yes, and being able to express to them that you had to be able to approach in a way that
Hmm.
you could feel like you could be vulnerable and authentic and them not get angry or judgmental about it.
Right,
So this is where I
right.
have been in places with my own kids who are grown, but also with my parents. It's like, no, I don't feel the same way as you do, and that's the way you
Yeah,
raised me, and I don't agree with that, and we're going to have to come to some kind of terms because it doesn't make
right.
me a bad person. It just means that we don't agree on everything. And that's okay. That's okay. Fundamentally, I think we agree on most things,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there are things that I say no, no, I'm not about that. And I don't want you to go on and on thinking that you have to change that about me. Like
Yeah,
somehow that we can be accepting of one another just the way we are. And that's a really great place to get to.
I think one of the greatest mistakes, even I've been a victim of that, and I've, done this to others, is we don't allow enough room for people to fail, right? Like to fall off that pedestal. And I think
Mm,
it's such a dangerous place to be in when you put someone on a pedestal. And
right.
it's so unfair because they're not allowed to make mistakes. And when that happens, I think we hold them responsible for causing pain that really wasn't their intention ever. And
Yeah.
I think understanding that and really finding that capacity to convey that I am hurting, even if you did not intend for that to happen, but I will fix it and I will take care of it. I just need you to know that I'm in my space of trying to understand where this pain is coming from. I think that's
Right.
that's been a very, very, very deep process for me, and it's been so beautiful to be able to convey that with my sibling, my brother, my parents, my friendships, my girlfriends. I have some really, really deep rooted friendships now, and I don't
Oh,
think I
that's
would have
awesome.
gotten there had I not done this work in the last 8 years.
Right. And so at some point, do you feel like you can look back and look back in gratitude even for all
Oh,
the
it's
pain that you
always,
went through?
always in gratitude. I never would have become an artist had I not gone through that.
So, okay, so let's move a little bit forward to that because were you a painter before that or did you learn this through the process of this?
I did. I taught myself through the process. My background is in graphic design and e-commerce,
Uh-huh.
um, and I've always had a creative mindset, but never really painted before. But during that breakup, those 6 months, that like really deep grieving, I couldn't stop thinking about painting. It's just something was calling, and it I don't know, I couldn't shake that feeling, and I decided I would give it a shot. Of course, the first year sucked, but and it hurt, really, really hurt to look at what I was creating, but it really hurt even more to not create. And so
Mm,
that's what I held on to. I hung on to that. And one of my greatest learnings from the breakup and therapy was that I mean, vulnerability, I feel like, is everyone's kryptonite, but it was such a huge block for me to connect with people deeply, um, which is so ironic because I love very, very deeply.
mm,
And
obviously.
I just would, and I just couldn't convey that to that level because my ex was so surprised to see the depth of my love during the breakup period. And
Mm.
to me, that was such sadness that I couldn't convey that in the 2.5 years, right? Like, I'm like, how do we not create that space in each other,
Oh,
that
yeah,
home
you
in our
see.
hearts? Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I
I
was just
love
able
that.
to take that. Yeah.
So you took that as a piece of you that you had to learn about yourself and the piece that you had to allow to crack open
Yeah.
and be able to show that even though you felt it and maybe even thought that you were showing it, apparently it was not coming through.
No, I
And
thought I was conveying it very well, but it was
right.
clearly not being conveyed.
Right. And that's one of the things you wrote in here is accepting vulnerability as a strength and not a weakness. And
Hmm.
maybe, and this is something our bodies tell the story, not our words, not
Yeah.
even our actions all the time. Our bodies tell the story. So if we have a part of us that we're still holding close,
Hmm.
that other person might not be able to put their finger on it, but they feel it.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can't understand what it is. So I dealt with this with my ex too, in one sense. I just kept getting, like he didn't know how to express it, but he kept saying, "You're
Hmm.
not affectionate enough." And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. Like I'm
Yeah.
holding your hand. I'm lovey-dovey when we go out. I'm trying. I'm literally making an effort to try to show affection. And when you're in a phase of life when you have kids and teenagers and you're running to 18 different functions for all our after school stuff, it's like your life gets in the way. So it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
I get it. I'm going to try to do this. We're going to sit on the sofa. I'm going to hold hands when we're in the car. I'm going to take the first step. I'm going to come to you. But that's not what it was about.
Yeah.
That wasn't what it
No.
was about at all. And when things really fell apart, even though that relationship was definitely toxic, when things really fell apart, the way it was expressed was, I don't feel attractive to you. You don't make me feel attractive.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that is a very different thing than you're not affectionate.
Yeah.
So there was something in him or something between us that I wasn't proving that I was physically drawn to him,
Uh,
attracted to him.
yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't think, like you said, I didn't think there was that. I didn't feel like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but, maybe I'm aloof. Maybe I'm not you know what I'm saying? But it makes you look internally. And so I
Yeah.
totally, it is, wow, it's a journey. It definitely is a journey. And I like how you say it's a journey of self-love because it's one of the
Hmm.
things like I really love to talk about, and I know that it's become so woo-woo and cliche and
Mainstream. I
people,
know.
right, people think, "Oh, it's, self-care and self-love." First of all, those are not the same thing.
No.
They're two different things.
Yeah.
um, and second of all, because one is about the actions you take, and one is about the way you look at yourself and
Hmm.
and appreciate yourself and the emotions you have towards yourself.
Yeah.
So they're two different things, but one can prove the other, right? Like if you
Hmm.
take care
Hmm.
of yourself, you're proving to yourself that you love yourself. But the self love is and the self care, both when you look at them, even separately, are the hard things. It's not just
Hmm.
all bubble baths and pedicures,
Yeah.
and glasses of wine and candles. It's eating the right food or
Right.
looking inside and saying, hey, this part of you is not the best thing. You could do
Yeah.
better. You can do better.
I think
But
self love, like, I think the greatest thing in self love truly is learning, one, allowing yourself to make mistakes, creating that space to, like, fail, fail, fail until you succeed, right? Like, you cannot succeed unless you know how to fail. That's, to me, is the greatest thing in self love. And second is forgiving yourself, because I think we are so hard on ourselves, right? Like, it's okay to fall from that pedestal we even put ourselves on.
right, and how do we get to a point where we think we have to be perfect? That's a nut. Like it's
I
probably
know,
a whole
right?
nother. It's not really a whole nother show. Like when
God,
we
I
were
hope I'm
kids, we
never
did.
perfect because I have nothing else to work on
Right.
then.
But when we were kids, we never did ever think that we needed to be perfect. We just
Yeah.
tried things over and over again.
Hmm.
We drew the picture,
Hmm.
we didn't like it, we threw it away, we started over. We
Yeah.
didn't care if we colored out of the lines. We learned how to ride a bike. We fell, we fell, we fell, we fell till we didn't fall anymore. It's all these things. So at some point, it shifts. And it's interesting to try to think about like why. Why do we put ourselves up against that? I mean, I get that there's expectations that are put on us, and part of it
Hmm.
becomes that. And I know for me, I came from um, a family, especially my mom, who was like, you can and you will, which is great. That is 100% true. But then if you didn't, then you had some kind of consequence, even if you
Sure.
had a bad day, even if you were falling short, it was punishment for grades that you didn't make. It was, like this, where I get that you got to hold a person to doing their best, but
Hmm.
there has to be some leeway. And I think, those cycles we tend to create in our kids. And I think it's a parenting shift that needs to happen. I tried to kind of shift that a little bit, and hopefully I didn't do it too much, but
I think
we'll
Sarah
see. I
Blakely
still have a
talks
little
about
time.
it. I think Sarah
Yeah.
Blakely talks about it. The founder of Spanx.
Yep.
I think one of the practices that she talked about at the dinner table her dad
with her
created
dad.
was, yeah, the let's talk about what you failed at today. And I think
Yeah,
that's such a beautiful practice. I never had the opportunity to do that with my parents.
right.
Um, and I think it's just a cultural thing, right? Like we have such a difference in our mindsets where Indian culture is very much about safety and, really creating the financial and professional safety. And
Mm.
when I decided to choose, like, even now, I don't think they feel safe in my profession because it's just not the norm, right?
Right, right. You
And
need
my
to be a
brother and I are
doctor.
completely opposite. Like
Right.
we're both entrepreneurs. And
That's
it's
funny.
hard for them. It's really hard for them. And I think for me, the trauma and healing came during that, understanding their fears and pain as well, because all they
Right.
care about is for me to be secure.
Right.
And
And so you
I
see, that's
take the time,
beautiful.
yeah, right. And I take the time and energy to really help them understand that it's okay. Like, I will be okay. And if I need help, I will always have you. And I think they really love hearing that I can rely on them.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful in the sense that you recognize that they are always going to be parents,
Hmm.
regardless of what age you are.
Right. No matter
And
what
you
age.
acknowledge that and you respect that. And you're like, I get it. I totally now I see where you're coming from, even, but I got this. But I'm
Yeah.
so also understanding that you are there for me and you got my back. And so
I mean,
that's a
okay. Don't get me wrong. There's still chaos in our relationship, but we tend to find the peace, calmer waters
there
sooner
you
than
go.
later now
Oh,
than we
I
did
love
in the
that.
past.
I
So
love that. So all the areas of healing. So how did art become the thing? So like, okay, so you started painting in this
hmm
process, which is crazy because I kind of thought that might have been a thing that you put away and then you picked it back up. But so this is something you actually just decided to do and hone because you felt
hmm
called to it.
yeah. And I think, like, for
So,
me, one of the greatest things that I was able to, um, I guess I was extended the grace from my family to always go after what I wanted. And that, I will say, was really wonderful. My grandpa was a freedom fighter. He fought against the war with the British in India. So I just grew up in this mindset of go getters. And I didn't have a plan B. I've never had a plan B for anything that I've ever done in life. And I think that really got me here because when I wanted to paint, I just wanted to paint. I didn't want to do anything else. And I had already moved back home. I didn't have rent to pay. So I just decided I am going to stay here until my heart is ready and safe, and really felt this need to be home because I was starting to understand all the trauma that we needed to heal together as a family. And so I just started painting in the basement of my parents' home, and that's still my studio to this day. And this is the basement where I cried my eyes out during the breakup, and it's also the basement where I healed my heart. And it's such a near and dear place for me, and it's
mm,
so sacred. The topics that I started to paint, I think, like, first year when I was trying to teach myself to paint, I was just trying to figure out how to convey the emotions that I wanted to talk about because my work is so deep, right? Like, I
mhm,
talk about very emotional work that you do in life in general,
mhm,
in on self awareness and emotional. Like, it's all about emotional awareness and staying in that space of self discovery.
mhm,
And um, I didn't know how to convey that, and the first year was rough. And until I decided, there's a great book. It's called Still Writing by Dani Shapiro. And in there, there's an chapter called Audience of One. And in that, basically in the chapter, she talks about it, and I think Stephen Hawking also talks about this, um, where, well, not Stephen Hawking. God, who's the guy who writes the horror thrillers?
oh, Stephen King.
Yeah, Stephen King, I think, wrote for his wife. And so, and Dani Shapiro wrote for her husband. And she said it was just the audience of one. Because if you try to write for a mass audience, you will never be able to write something successful. And for me, with art, it was the same thing. I was trying to create for the Instagram audience, right? Because Instagram was just starting to, like, kick off at the time. And it
Mhm,
really wasn't allowing me to be authentic. And so I decided to just take a step back and paint in silence in privacy for about 6 months. And I chose myself as the audience and my learnings that I had been trying to kind of start unpacking in therapy. And from that, I learned that vulnerability was the one, you know, thing that was missing in my past relationships in general, not just romantic. And so I decided to unpack that in my first project, and I called it 100 Vulnerable Days. There's a project that I'm not sure if it happens still, but it was quite kind of big at the time on Instagram. It was called the 100 Day Project. And I decided to join that and paint for 100 days. And
Okay.
I painted across, give or take, 100 days. Um, and I talked about vulnerability from multiple different angles. And it really just connected with people instantly because it was such beautiful conversations that I was having through the art. And I connect pieces of writing with my art. That's kind of my thing. And these titles that I choose for my paintings are very like deeply thought out. And it's just started
Right.
like people like I remember day two, someone messaged me and said, "Can I buy this?" And I'm like Googling, I'm like, how do you price your art? And so that collector has like I think three of my pieces now. And it's
Oh,
just kind of
wow.
just started this journey of this beautiful connection and telling these stories of pain and emotional awareness and really capturing stories, not
Mhm.
just my stories, but my clients' stories, because all of my commissions are also stories that I, kind of come up with, and we come up with a storyline that I try to paint. So it's just been such a gift to be able to capture that.
Okay, so and this is going to lead me into something
Sure,
a little off of this track, but still inside of the painting.
sure, sure, sure.
And that is, so I was reading on one of your posts about a painting you did that you talked about the Indian culture, how you tried to separate yourself from it and
Hmm.
actually blend in, and
Hmm.
then later deciding, hey, this is a thing that makes me me. And I
Yeah,
don't know why I ever wanted to blend in. I need to own my heritage and my culture and allow that to be part of everything that I do and to let that make me stand out. So tell
right.
me, like, kind of how you went through that because the painting itself is incredibly beautiful. Is it at the same
Thank
restaurant
you.
as the new mural? Or was it at a
No,
hotel? That
all
was
my
maybe it was
all
a
my
hotel.
murals are different. All my murals are in different places. The one you're talking about though is at Rue, Rooh. It's in Chicago, and that was my
Okay.
first Indian mural. And
She's
when
beautiful.
thank you so much. She's like one of my favorites. And yeah, I mean, I it was really interesting when I started painting. I chose not to paint Indian work, and then one of my clients wanted something really. We didn't know what we wanted. We couldn't figure out the story, and it was this. I spent a whole night trying to sketch different concepts for them. It was my first commission, and I eventually almost gave up. And then I had come up with this idea of a reflection of an Indian woman looking down at the skylines of Chicago and India, and one with Indian jewelry and one without. And I just wanted to, and I called it Roots. And so
Oh, I saw
that was
that
my
one
first,
too.
right.
Hmm.
So that's my
I
first
saw that one
painting.
too.
And that really became a very big hit. It's kind of a coveted print now, and it's in quite a few homes. And so when I sent them the sketch, they fell in love with it instantly and they said, we will take it. And so I ended up painting that's almost about 8 feet high. And that was the first time I embraced my culture. And it was such joy in it, and really almost a shock to kind of accept that I had been hiding from that part of my life and part of my identity so much, because coming to a new country and just like standing out was harder than blending in. And
You
so I
were a
just chose
teen,
this. I was
right?
19. I just decided to, yeah, I was 19. I just decided to assimilate. And I thought that was strength in that, and not standing out and really, being ambiguous culturally was so sexy at the time for me. Because when people couldn't guess my ethnicity, I would take pride in it. And
Hmm.
now I actually love it when people can, in the first guess, they can say I'm Indian. And it was such a shift. It was such a shift in
Hmm.
mindset when I painted that painting and really started embracing it and celebrating it in my work. And most of my murals are Indian, which I love because it's become such a moment of pride in the culture, in the
Right. So
community as well.
Yeah, and that was the next thing was now it's kind of taken it to a different level
Yeah,
from embracing that has expanded, right? Your
yeah.
your depth in
It's
the
part of my
paintings that
identity
you're
now. I mean, it's literally like I have three genres of work now. It's, the
so
abstraction, the, yeah, monochromatic, and now I have Indian as one of the genres.
I love it. Maybe I must have saw it on your website. I was trying to find it
Yeah.
here on Instagram just because I was going to be like, oh, let me hold it up. But it might have been on your website because I've been all over your stuff at this point. for,
My
for a
website
couple
needs
of
a rehab.
for a couple of weeks, I was like, oh, let me go here. Oh, let me go look at that. I just love looking at it. It's so it really is incredible. And so you guys, I put her website actually in in the fortune cookie. And you guys go explore her stuff, I mean, because I'm probably not gonna be able to find it on here. But go explore it because it is very moving. So I worked at an art gallery when I lived in California. I worked at an art gallery for 3 years, 4 years, I don't remember. And we did all these different shows, right?
Mhm.
And there were always just like these couple of artists that they would come through every so often, and I would connect so much with their work. I would be like, oh my God, this is incredible, or this makes me feel this way. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's kind of how I felt. Oh, this is the one though. This isn't the one that we were talking about, but this is the one I was talking about with you when you said about the Indian
Oh
culture.
yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that was the one that was in Chicago, the Rue something.
That is in Chicago, correct.
Yeah.
At Rue.
Yeah. So anyway, she's just I don't know, I just look at her. Well, one of the things I like, because you said this too, is their eyes always connect.
Yes. That's really
So
important to me.
tell me why it's important. Why does that matter?
I think it's been such a journey for me to be able to truly um express myself so openly because I always found strength in um being ambiguous, even emotionally, and being able to just find that capacity and the ability to be able to share with people exactly how I feel and be okay in that space, right? Like, because that takes courage. And so for
Hmm.
me, that boldness in the eyes and the expression is so important. And yeah, it's like I get fixated upon it until I get that expression really, really minutely perfect.
Right. And when you look at her, right, you look at her and she is looking at you with confidence, to me in this picture,
Yeah.
and I might
Hmm.
you tell me if I'm interpreting which
Yeah.
I guess it's fine. Anybody can get what they want from your paintings as
Sure,
long
sure,
as they're
sure.
getting something. That's probably good. But
Right.
I feel confidence and grace, but a little bit of smirk, like almost underneath, that says, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what I
And there's
see in this
always, yeah.
picture.
Yeah. And I
And it's
usually
kind
there
of
is that
like,
element. Yeah,
mm,
usually there is that element of mystery in most of the women that I paint because there's a
yeah,
story that's because I always leave room for some story deeper than, what you see.
yeah. And so I just love it. And then the flowers and the jewelry and everything. It's just, I don't know. It's pretty.
So yeah, it's a,
So,
it's a very culturally representative piece from it's an homage to an Indian designer. He's a pretty famous designer in India. And
oh,
he
cool.
brought those flowers and that whole ornate jewelry back. And so
Oh,
it was an
okay.
homage to him. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, anyway, so where does that it fit in the toolboxes that you've created? So you said, okay, so I needed to go through all of this
Sure.
to heal, and now I have this toolbox that allows me to process, or
Sure.
I have stuff to rely on. Give us some of the tools that you rely on. Share that with us, so your tools could be our tools.
Right. I think one of the greatest tools I would say is calling. When people, there's this myth that you wake up one day and you'll just know you're calling. It doesn't come knocking. It's not that romantic. It's not that, dramatic. It doesn't come knocking at your door and you'll know and you wake up and you just, you know, for me, that moment wasn't that dramatic. I had had this calling before. I had had signs in the past but I chosen to ignore them. I think it's your job to really like those dots that connect backwards, right? Like as Steve Jobs says. I think it's
Okay.
your job to eventually, it should get so loud that you can no longer ignore, and it's your job to really take on that task. So I'd say that's my greatest toolkit, to be able to just jump in, and when I get comfortable is the time to really explore more, because I don't like to get comfortable. And
Mhm.
that was really that space I was in. I was building other people's dreams at the time, and it just, I knew that wasn't enough, building somebody else's company. I was not the best employee. And I think it was just at that time I decided to just go independent and become an independent contractor, because I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew there was something was coming. And so I created that space and honored that, like, calling to just create room for whatever's coming next. So I'd say
Yeah.
that was my greatest toolkit. The other is ask for help. It takes a village. Ask for help, because I think we are so conditioned to not connect with others deeply and really share our dreams and, um, aspirations with others, because we're so scared. Um, I say share with your deep circle, who you trust.
Mhm.
On that same note, though, be cognizant of people projecting their fears on you, right? Because when you have big dreams, it's not so much that they're jealous. They could be, right? There might be some people, but it is very much, when it comes from your loved ones, it's because they are worried that you won't make it, because they feel that they won't make it. So I think it's your job to filter that and really kind of protect your sacred process and really understanding your calling. Work in silence if you need to sometimes, right? Like I painted a lot in silence, like nobody knew.
Mhm.
And it was just something I wanted to do. And when I started selling work, when I started getting noticed, I think my parents really understood that there's something
Yeah.
special here. So I
Yeah.
say that, yeah, listen to your heart and be careful of who you share your, dreams with, because not everyone's capable of receiving or understanding them. And
Yeah, and
lastly,
I
yeah,
okay, go ahead.
sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No,
Oh,
no,
and
finish
lastly, I'd
because
say marketing. Can't Marketing and networking. You can't get anywhere without it. Go take names, take business cards, go to events, shake
okay.
hands.
I
Like
love
that's
that
huge.
because like you said, that kind of just goes back to it takes a village, right? Nobody
Yeah,
does this by themselves. Nobody gets
yeah,
to any place in life and says, "Oh, well, I did it all on my own." No, it's about connection. It's one of the reasons why I like to share the stories here and
mm-hmm.
why I've decided to create this podcast. I mean, I know there are a million podcasts out there that tell stories, right? But
Yeah,
the purpose of me telling these stories, specifically the way I like to share them, is that this is sharing the connection and the commonality that we all have.
yeah,
And when you start to understand that you're not alone in your struggles, that I've been there, you've been there. I mean, I've talked to an Emmy award winning, TV director for the news. He's been there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't
yeah,
matter where you are, where you come from. It just shows we're human beings, all of
mhm,
us, and we are more alike than we are different. Yeah, we all have different and unique talents. We are all unique in our personalities, but
mhm,
fundamentally, we go through the same things. We have emotions, we have feelings, we have these things that we go through. And if we do it together, then we rise together. And
yeah,
so, I think that the other thing is art in whatever form, right? Whether it's music,
sure,
whether it's acting, whether it's your painting, it all touches people on a deeper level. It is
yeah,
something that you don't have to speak the same languages, you don't have to be from the same place, and there's still something that touches you and connects you with that. And I think that's amazing. And I think for you, visually, you get it, right? It's just 100% there. So I just am like, I don't know, it's just
Well,
one of
thank
those
you.
things. Like I wish I had that talent. I can tap dance. You know what I mean? Like
But I
it's
mean, I think like that's, yeah. I mean, I
I
chose
can
this
talk.
medium, right? And like when I see poetry, when I read poetry, I sometimes feel like, oh, I wish I could write like that, right? Like we all
Right.
have those
Right.
areas where we
Right.
wish we could do something. Yeah.
So I don't know if you're okay with this. We didn't really get a chance to talk at the beginning, but are you okay if anybody wants to come up and have a little bit
Absolutely.
few minutes at the
Yes.
end here? So you
Yeah.
guys in the audience that are still hanging out with us, I have Matthew, Ron, Tia, Woody, which I'm pretty sure is a bot, but I'm not positive, and Peter, who also is a painter, actually.
Okay.
I mean, hopefully Peter will raise his hand because he was on the show. He's a mouth painter.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and he's commissioned by, I don't remember the name of the organization, but they do the mouth and feet paintings, and he
Okay.
does commission work with them.
Oh,
And
wow.
so yeah, so it's pretty cool. And oh good, he is asking to come up. Because I think there's a creativity that you guys share that probably I don't really get because I'm not in that world. Hey
Yeah.
Peter,
Hey there.
how's it going?
You can hear me okay?
I can
Yes.
hear you
Hi.
okay.
Excellent. I can come on camera if you want.
Oh, sure. Let
Sure.
me let me get you up here.
It's always fun for everyone to see everyone.
That's right. I love it. Did you get the invite?
Yep,
Okay.
there we go.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Peter.
Nice to meet you, Jenny. Good to see you again,
Like,
Deanna.
Good to see
nice to
you.
meet you.
I think, yeah, it's the MFPA mouth and feet painting artist that I'm commissioned by. So, I mean, I got so much out of this. You are both so enlightening, and one thing I mean, there's many things I appreciate about you, Jenny, that you spoke about. One big thing is like I kind of got dual questions. Number one is
Sure.
you're totally an entrepreneur, but totally artistic, and like I'm that way too. It's like that's a very rare breed. Like, how do you embrace and or juggle those two opposite brains?
I thrive in chaos. For me, it's always, I really, really, truly enjoy my analytical side and my creative side. So for me to be able to blend the two together has been such a gift. I think one of the things that was lacking in my past life prior to becoming an artist was the creative side because I did the marketing side so well. I was able to manage businesses. I was able to head a department or multiple departments, but I was never fully satisfied. And now I'm able to pull out the two because for me, if I'm continuously painting, I think there's that pressure to always create and it's exhausting. I think emotionally it's so draining. And so when on those days I can check out and go into my analytical side and I can work on social media or my website or work for clients. And so I get to feed both brains and really relieve the pressure on both sides. So for me, it's a great way to balance things out. Sometimes one gets heavier than the other, and it gets thrown. But for the most part, I can find my way back in the middle.
That's amazing. And can I ask another question?
Sure,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Go for it, Peter.
The other thing that really stuck out to me that I think a lot of people would love to hear is, you kind of went from 0 to 60 with painting,
Hmm.
and you said you hadn't painted before, but something drew you to painting, and then you started painting and, identifying, clarifying, working through emotions with painting. But what was that voice? Like you really took a leap of faith to trust
Yeah.
an instinct. Were you had you been recently inspired by other paintings? Had you like what was the voice that you heard that said, "Hey Jenny, start painting"? Like,
That's
and how
that's a
did you
great
get
question.
that instinct?
That's a great question. Honestly, I'd say the voice was whenever I would look at. I mean, my favorite place to hang out at is at the Art Institute in Chicago. And it's not so much just the whole in older paintings, it's just anything and everything I would see in art and creativity. It just really made me feel like I was supposed to do that. But then once I started looking at artists today, in today's day and age, creating art on Instagram, it would hurt. It really, like, I felt this like pain within that, oh my God, I should be doing this. And I think that was when I could not stop thinking about it, because it's how I feel right now with sculptural work. And I'm being called to create installations for the first time. And I have no idea where to get started. But it hurts so much when I see these massive installations and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot wait to create something like this. And I think
Hmm.
I would say that would be like a great place to start for people who are really looking for. So if you read something really poignant and beautiful and your heart, like, it tugs at your heart and you feel like you should be writing something like that, I think that's like a great sign from the universe. An Alchemist, the book, it's one of my favorite books, right? And you just, when you get to that place, you really didn't even know you were meant to do that. I think you're just a conduit, right? Like you have this great journey that you are just, it just comes through you. And when that happens, it's like, it's magic. And for me, it really was that pain. I felt so much pain in not creating.
That is crazy cool. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know that people always listen to that. I think people
Yeah.
don't know how to listen to that. That they might
Yeah.
feel that pull, they might feel that inclination, they might feel drawn to something and they don't know why they're drawn to it and they don't listen to it. I know for me with speaking, and that is something I'm really trying to dive more into because I've been coaching and I love helping people. But when I have managed to get on to, in the past year, some stages or some podcast interviews, and I realize that I'm reaching a different audience and that I'm talking to people who need to hear what I have to say, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to do this more. Like I feel
Yeah. And
like
I think, yeah.
so much
Yeah.
energy from it that I could not sleep. That's how much energy, like energized for days. And it's like, yeah. So that's kind of, I think, the same thing. Like, then you feel like, okay, I feel like this is where I'm meant to be.
Yeah. I mean, when you can really just sleep on, function on passion, it's
Right.
it's quite
Only
something
for,
when you first get started. You sleep, you have
right.
2 hours of sleep and you can keep going somehow. It's bizarre.
Yes. But it's true.
It's always
Yeah.
So,
there. Like when you're feeling either that pain or that desire, I believe it's like your soul just like yelling at
Yeah.
you, do this.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of people really ignore that sign. And I had ignored it for so long. For me, I think the beautiful part was when I was in that grieving period of grieving, I
mhm.
had nowhere to hide, right? Like I was really on the journey to face anything and everything. And the loudest sound was that I had to paint. And it hurt so much to not create. And like I said, first year, everything I created was so terrible and it hurt, but it hurt more to not create. And so I knew that I had to just keep going.
So how many years before you sold your first painting? Like from the
And
time
when
that
I
you,
started, I'd say a year later. It took me about a year really to even.
but that's not that long. You know what I mean?
No, but I'm telling you, I painted a lot. I'm
Well,
talking
yes.
every single day.
Okay.
Like
And I
it
get
was
that.
it was discipline. And I am very disciplined when it comes to my professional life. I'm nowhere not disciplined anywhere else. But but such a like I painted every single day. And that was something that I because I knew that if I didn't do it, is because it's almost like everybody can draw, right? If you learn. I truly had to teach myself. Any skill can be developed. It's not so much about talent, it's more about developing your skill set. And everyone gets better in time. And for me, it took an entire year to even feel comfortable to even sell a piece. To
Yeah.
date, if I'm not happy with the piece, I won't sell it. So that's
Mm,
that's a rule that I have. Like if I'm not in love with it, I won't sell it.
yeah. And I say the same thing with Peter. I've looked at some of his things that he's done and how very articulate it is, and it's with his mouth. And I'm like,
I need to see your work.
this is insane.
So
Hey,
is there
Peter
work what we
Sobey.
would
He's
see in
Peter's.
these months? hand and mouth calendars that we get at home. My dad loves those.
Yeah, that's like MFPA literally sends out their big deal is Christmas cards and calendars. Yeah, that's probably why.
Okay,
I
I was
haven't had
thinking
So
probably.
the yet of being featured on one of their calendars, but they've licensed many of my paintings. I'm just hoping they show up on a card or
Uh,
calendar one of these
I
days.
hope they do. That would be amazing because my dad loves them.
that's so funny. So yeah, so I don't know if anybody else in the audience wants to come up and chat. But you know, I'm glad that Peter came up because I knew that you guys would connect over the art. Um, one more. I'm gonna just show one more. I know I'm not doing it justice trying to show this in a phone camera because Fireside is weird and doesn't make it easy for us to share our screen.
I
But this
know.
was another one that I thought was really, really moving.
Thank you.
Wow,
I'm
that's
gonna read the caption to you.
Yeah, we can see
So,
it.
okay, I'm gonna read the caption because the caption said, "My mom smiled at me, and her smile kind of hugged me." So that's RJ Palacio Wonder. So,
Yeah.
uh, uh, just her smile kind of hugged me. This picture definitely says that, like this painting definitely says that. It's incredible. And I like the fact that it's see through. So, is there a story behind that too?
Oh, there's a
Because
huge story. Yeah, the
it's a
couple. Yeah, when they contacted me, they had chosen. They are an interracial couple, and they had chosen to adopt children and not have their own children.
Mhm.
And they approached me to create a mural for their home. And so we came up with the idea of creating it on wood panels and we would install them, custom panels.
Mhm.
But they wanted to somehow create a story where their future children would feel included in the family and feel very loved and across multiple ethnicities because they plan on adopting any children from any race. And it took me almost, I'd say about 8 months to come up with this concept. And they were gracious enough to give me all that time. And when I ended up with this story, it was just such a beautiful process because I wanted to capture. Oh, and by the time I actually created this concept, they had adopted a son.
Oh, cool.
So, so I ended up adding the boy with the mom and the kid with the father. They don't know if it's going to be a daughter or a son. So I created an androgynous character next to him. And so they are watching the sunset, and I did the backside because the other panel on that mural is the dad and the other child, the second child, because they plan on adopting two children. And
I love that.
we just wanted to celebrate, you know, multiple ethnicities and make the children feel loved. And she sort of looks like her.
Mhm.
It's not her, but I wanted to somehow celebrate the parents in it as well.
Well, and something that it looks it to me that's interesting with it is that it looks like even when she's not here anymore, she's still going to be there
Yes, yes,
because of
yes,
the translucent where everything's kind of coming through her too.
yeah,
The background like she's a little see-through, so a little ghostly,
yeah,
but not ghostly, you know what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah,
so then it
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
anyway, I don't know. I don't anyway. All right, I'm getting
Yeah,
carried
and I just
away and
wanted to create this like story that would forever be there because I always think about these pieces as legacy pieces, right? Because
right, right.
yeah, like if
Well, because I would
in the
assume people are
future that
spending pretty
yeah,
decent money on this kind of stuff too, right?
yes, that too. And of course, I just feel like if you pass it on from down your family, I hope that there's this story that they can always cherish.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's how I feel about it. Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. Well,
Thank you.
anyway, so I don't know. I could just go on and on with the artwork. So I appreciate you coming on with me. I'm not going to keep you any
Thank you so
longer. It's
much.
9:05. It's been an hour, a little over an hour. Um, but what I do like to say when I'm wrapping up, especially to my guests, is that I see you and that you are beautiful. I really do. I mean, what a beautiful soul, to be able to take and your what you feel and the stories that you're given, and because of the things that you've been through, be able to put that into something that could last forever. And that's kind of really what happens here. And I think It's pretty amazing. It's
Well,
beautiful.
thank you. This has been wonderful. And I just want to acknowledge you for, just sharing what you have and really the willingness of being open with your story and your journey and inviting people to have such deep, meaningful conversations. So I truly appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, you guys, I appreciate you being here. Hey, Deborah. Sorry you popped in right at the end. You're going to have to watch the replay on this one. It's really good. So, um, but so till next time, we have some, I have a doctor coming on next week that Peter
Oh,
recommended,
fun.
coming on next week, who is an author, and he's
Hmm.
going to be sharing, how he helps in men's mental health, kind of
Oh,
focuses
wow.
in that area. So
Yeah.
it's going to be pretty cool. And he wrote a book on it. So come
Which I
back.
love. I love that. I love that topic in
Yeah.
general, right? The whole toxic masculinity
Yeah, so like
is going away.
in May I did this whole series on, because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and so Peter
Yeah.
was part of that series, but it was all men. It was all men, and I got
Love it.
all these guys to come on and do their story to show, yeah, you know what? We have stuff we've gone through, and we can be vulnerable, we can be open, and we can share how we've moved through those things, so that
Yeah.
that masculinity doesn't have to feel like you have to be damaged
Hmm.
and closed, and you
Hmm.
know like my husband likes to say, no, we don't talk about that, we just push that down. That's
I
what he
know.
tells me. No, we don't talk about that, we just push that down, that's what you're supposed to do. I'm like, no, that's not what you're doing. I drive him crazy. But anyway, so I did that, and so there's a lot of things that are springing from that too. So I love it. And I love all
Great.
the connections we're making here too on Fireside, so it's pretty cool.
Peter, if you're still there and if you're on Instagram, will you follow me and drop me a quick note so I can see your work? I would love to see it.
Yeah. And I can connect you to, on in the
Oh,
back
great.
channel
Yeah, that would be
somewhere.
great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Um, so anyway, that's it. So you guys, I want to just say thanks to you, Jenny, for showing up for me today. And till next time, we will see you
Sounds
back
good.
here. All
Thank
right, I'm
you.
gonna
See ya.
play some music here and try to get everything turned off. It takes me a minute.
Sounds good. It was a pleasure. See you guys.